I also spoke to Victor Gao, who is vice president of the Beijing-based think tank, the Center for China and Globalization. I asked him whether John Kerry's Beijing visit could signal the beginnings of a climate deal between the world's two biggest polluters.
His visit is important in the sense that indeed, in order to rally the world together in the fight against the negative impact of the climate change, China and the United States need to do something together. They need to join hands rather than getting at each other's jugular. Now, China is indeed the largest emitter. However, on a per capita basis, the United States is a much larger emitter than China. And the energy intensity of the U.S. economy and the U.S. society at large is much higher than that of China. Therefore, I think it is time for both China and the United States to get their acts together, to do the right thing, rather than, for example, what the United States did in bailing itself out of the Paris Climate Change Accord. And I hope the United States will never do that kind of thing again. And China and the United States working together about the climate change is the only right thing to do going forward.
Okay, but we are trying to avoid jugulars, aren't we? So what about China building more coal power plants when we know that coal is part of the problem?
Indeed, China's pronouncement has already been clearly made. That is, by 2030, China needs to be neutral as far as emission is concerned. And then China, by 2060, should be a zero emission at all. Therefore, I think China will continue to do the right thing. China has already announced major halts or suspensions of the newly constructed coal-based power stations. And on the other hand, given the fact that China has the largest coal reserve in the world, and coal today still accounts for about 55% of the energy mix in China, despite of all the efforts to bring that down. And I hope China in the coming years will reduce the dependence on coal to below 50%. So there is still a long way to go. And I hope by 2030, China will no longer need to build any more coal power plants. China has also announced that it is stopping financing any newly built coal-fired power plants outside of China. So you need to look at the whole picture together.
If China and America do not settle their differences, whether it's through climate change or other issues, what are the consequences going to be for the rest of the planet?
Let us be realistic. China and the United States will always have differences. However, the differences should not be what divide them. The differences should be what unite them. And on major issues like the climate change, there should be no major differences. China and the United States need to do the right thing together, because otherwise we are going to suffer the consequences together. On the other hand, the United States need to firmly acknowledge that China is a power on the par with the United States, and the United States can never do anything in its own capacity or rallying its allies to get China down to the ground. That's not possible. The United States need to acknowledge that. The sooner it does so, it is better for the United States as well as for mankind as a whole.
You want to be treated like an equal by the Americans?
China is an equal of the United States. Whether the United States acknowledge that or not, that's another thing. If it does not acknowledge that, it will suffer the consequences for its own misjudgment.
Okay. On that note, Victor Gao, thank you very much.
谢谢。